The curious case of the necktie, how battle gear became business wear. Every day, millions of people search how to tie a tie online, struggling with a piece of cloth that serves no practical purpose. In fact, the necktie might be the only piece of modern clothing that doesn't actually do anything useful at all. So why do we wear them? The answer takes us to a bloody battlefield in 17th century Europe, where a piece of military equipment would unexpectedly transform into one of fashion's most enduring symbols. In 1636, amid the chaos of the 30 Years' War, Croatian mercenaries arrived in Paris, catching attention not for their fighting skills, but for the strange pieces of cloth around their necks. These weren't fashion statements, they were practical pieces of military equipment used to hold their jackets together. What made these pieces of cloth special was how they were worn, knotted in the front and flowing down the chest. Each regiment had its own distinct colors and patterns, making them early military identification markers. But it wasn't until King Louis XIV spotted them in 1646 that everything changed. The Sun King was instantly captivated by these colorful neckcloths. In a move that would reshape fashion history, he not only adopted the style himself but made them mandatory at royal gatherings. The French called them cravats, a corruption of the word croat, and suddenly, what began as battlefield gear became the height of European fashion. As the cravat spread through European society, it began to evolve. The wealthy would spend fortunes on lace and silk versions, while the emerging middle class opted for simpler cotton designs. But it was the Industrial Revolution that truly transformed the tie. The late 1800s saw the birth of the modern necktie. As machines made mass production possible, ties became narrower, longer, and more practical for everyday wear. The invention of the silk-weaving Jacquard loom allowed for complex patterns and designs, turning ties into canvases for personal expression. What's particularly fascinating is how the tie became a marker of social status. The width, material, pattern, and even how it was tied could tell you everything about a person's social standing. Schools and clubs began creating their own specific ties, a practice that continues today in many parts of the world. The necktie's journey from military necessity to social symbol is a masterclass in how clothing shapes culture. In the business world, it became more than just an accessory, it became armor. Studies have shown that wearing a tie can actually change how people perceive you, increasing ratings of professionalism and intelligence. But perhaps most interesting is how different cultures adopted and adapted the tie. In Japan, it became so ingrained in business culture that the government had to launch a "Cool Biz" campaign to convince workers to abandon ties in summer to reduce air conditioning use. Meanwhile, in Silicon Valley, rejecting the tie became a statement of rebellion against traditional business culture. The tie also created unexpected problems. Some hospitals have banned doctors from wearing them after studies showed they can carry dangerous bacteria. Yet in many schools worldwide, they remain a mandatory part of uniforms, teaching children the complex art of tie-tying from an early age. Today, we find ourselves at a fascinating crossroads. While some traditionalists defend the tie as a symbol of professionalism, others see it as an outdated relic. The COVID-19 pandemic accelerated this divide, as remote work made formal business wear seem increasingly unnecessary. Yet the numbers tell an interesting story. The global necktie market is still worth billions of dollars annually. The most expensive tie ever sold went for $43,000, an extraordinary price for what is essentially a decorative strip of fabric. And something that might surprise you, mathematicians have calculated that there are exactly 177,147 different ways to tie a conventional necktie. Though most people only ever learn one or two methods, this simple piece of cloth holds countless possibilities. So the time you find yourself searching how to tie a tie, remember, you're participating in a tradition that spans centuries, crossing from battlefields to boardrooms, from military necessity to cultural symbol. The necktie might not serve any practical purpose anymore, but perhaps that's exactly what makes it special. It's purely human, a symbol we created and continue to maintain, even as its meaning constantly evolves. And who knows? Maybe in another 400 years, people will look back at our ties the same way we look at ruffs and powdered wigs, as fascinating remnants of a particular moment in human history. Or perhaps, like the Croatian mercenaries who started it all, we'll find new ways to reinvent this curious piece of cloth yet again.